Okay, well, I'm going to try to make this short, but there are like 50 slides in here, and if you'll notice, at the bottom of it, it said that the presentation origin is by W4DKS, one of our members. And, you know, why should I reinvent the wheel? He did a good job making this presentation before at Visalia. So if you've been to Visalia, you've seen this presentation. But if you haven't, I hope you enjoy it and get a feel for what it is. Okay, so why go to Sable Island in the first place? Well, it's been quite a while, or had been quite a while since anybody had been there. There's a list of the operations before us that we were mainly aware of. And you'll notice there had been no activity for 10 years on the following bands and modes. That is 10 and 12 meters, 30 meters, 160 meters, 17, except for about 1,000 QSOs that were made in 2014 and on RIDI. There had never been any activity from Sable on FT8, FT4, 2 meters, and EME. So this was the thing that we were really trying to accomplish there. Another reason to go to Sable, even though it was only number 49 on the overall needs list, it was number 26 overall on CW, and it was 17 overall on data. You can see the other numbers there. In Asia, it was definitely high up on the list for needs, and the Japanese, they contributed quite nicely to help us get to the island and all. Murray A4DAN was the leader of the expedition, and it took 7 years for this to come to fruition. Took a lot of negotiation. He made several trips on his own expenses up to Halifax to talk with the people, and even made one trip out to the island itself while there, and he made it was a day trip and made a couple QSOs, well, more than a couple, but he did make some QSOs from there at that time. There was our team. Of course, there's yours truly. We had K9CT, W2GD, Glenn, W0GJ, Lou, N2TU, Lee, WW2DX, Dan, W4DKS, who put this presentation together, and then our team leader, Murray, A4DAN. And if you look around or look underneath there, you'll see these folks were pretty well experienced on DXpeditions. The mainland team was important as well. Bob, K4UEE, was originally supposed to go with us, but was not able to make it for health reasons. Bill, W5DH, or K5DHY, was our overall IT kind of guy away from the island. San was wanting to go with us. Pat, into IEN, was a big help on getting people there. Randy had been there before and is a good team member. Helping us, and Chaz took care of the website for us. I guess I need to put this thing closer, don't I? And then John, N8AA, was wanting to go with us, but was not able to. But that was our mainland team. And then we had a couple of folks that we felt like were in memoriam to. Wayne, K8LEE, had been on a previous trip, good friend of all of us, and then he passed away. Before, you know, in the 7 years time frame, and then Will had an aircraft accident, I think it was about a year before we left, and passed away. So those were two people that we would have had on our team if it hadn't happened. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. There was a lot of fundraising done. Numerous DX organizations helped. We had W2GT, or GD, and K9CT joined us basically at the last moment. I think John, W2GD, only had like 1 week notice before he joined us. Getting to Halifax was a chore in itself. WW2DX, well, you can see the calls on the left side. They flew by air out of Long Island after getting to Long Island on their own, but into EIN contributed his Gulfstream to fly the folks from Long Island up to Halifax and back. Four of us were not quite as smart. Glenn and I drove to Halifax, and Murray and Dan drove. Murray from North Carolina through DC, picked up Dan there, and drove to Halifax and back. So, you know, it's kind of a long drive. If you look at it, it took us a couple days. Sable Island itself is basically it's just a sandbar. It's a crescent-shaped sandbar. I say approximately 23 miles long. It varies because that sand is constantly shifting out there. And they say it's a mile or a kilometer wide. Somebody said it was a mile wide. It is not a mile wide at its widest point as far as I'm concerned. It's a shallow or narrow island. How do we get there? Well, you don't take a ship out there. You could, supposedly, but there's no landing facilities. There's sharks all over the place. Of course, we know from other expeditions, we make it through the shark waters. But to get out to Sable, the main way you get out there is you travel by Sable Air, which is basically a charter. And then because of the number of team members we had and the amount of equipment, you could not get it all in one flight. And what we figured, because of the weather, it has to be VFR both ways for them to make the flight. And in order to get 2 flights in one day just was not very high probability. So we chartered a Sikorsky helicopter to take the second group out there. So, and another portion, he talked about 1,700 pounds, I think it was, of equipment they had. We were limited to approximately 3,000 pounds, us and our equipment, and that's just to get there and back. I mean, that was it in both aircraft. We had to weigh it all in. I mean, they were down to the pound as to what we had. We were afraid we were going to have to throw some stuff out at the last minute, but it was down to the pound. Literally, when we weighed it all up, and you can't tell it now, but I had to lose 30 pounds to meet the requirements. We all made a commitment that we would be less than, with our baggage, 40 pounds personal gear, including our own food, our baggage and our weight had to be less than 240 pounds for each one of us. So I had to go drop 30 pounds to make that. It's coming back on. All right, here's just loading up, getting loaded. We won't spend time there. The Sikorsky way in. And this is the landing site. There's no landing strip on Sable Island. You land on a beach. So the morning that you're planning on going out there, Sarah, who is the head person out there now, she goes out there and she does one of these things. Says, yeah, I think the plane can land. And there you are. You can see they actually even go through waters and in some places there, like right. Well, I went too far, but they had to dig her out for her to take off after she landed. This is where we stayed. We stayed in the visitors' quarters. So it wasn't like we're going to hear about later on and we've heard about in other places. It was nice. We had the visitors' quarters to ourselves. There's some of the antennas up. We had basically monoband Yagis, 3-element Yagis for each of the HF bands, except, you know, you get down to 30 meters and below. Three-element Yagis. They weren't that high, but you don't need that much high out there. There's our accommodations for sleeping, nice accommodations. The operating plan that we had, again, we wanted to maximize the ATNOs as much as we could, so we held off on sideband until after the WPX contest, because we figured if we worked sideband beforehand, the WPX contest, people who wanted to make a contact for the contest would also work us again. But if we waited till the contest and on, then they should limit the number of dupes on a band. So we waited until after the WPX, or to the WPX before we made that. We operated the multi-multi in the WPX contest, set a new record for Canada. On a multi-multi team, we made nearly 6,000 QSOs. And like I say, we set a new Canadian multi-multi record. Our priorities while we were there, were Japan, Africa, and South America. Just again, if because of the low location and how difficult it is to get there. Japan really has a very difficult time working Sable Island and also on St. Paul Island. We can only go to St. Paul Island in the summertime. Now think about trying to work long path to Japan. You look at a gray line, it never hits Japan. So we did as much as we could to make it happen for them. We used Foxhound exclusively on FT8, and I think you'll see it later on in the statistics, but over 50% of our QSOs were FT8. So obviously we met the criteria of doing a new mode from that island. Our stations consisted of K3s. We operated 10 to the 160, 2-meter EME, 6 meters, and satellite. Set some new records, of course, since EME had never been done there, but set some new records for that. WW2DX really put a lot of effort into getting his weight down so that we could get that equipment there, but spending the time on the air to make those QSOs. Joe W8GEX contributed a 60-meter dipole, so we made a few 60-meter people happy and got on that way. And M1MM was used for logging. We had planned to do continuous uploading for Club Log. We ran into some internet problems. The internet there is satellite, and it would drop, and every time it dropped, we basically would have had to restart everything all over again. So we ended up uploading our logs at least twice a day, which is my job. We uploaded the logs either to K5DHY or me directly into Club Log. So that's how we kept the stuff going up there. Those are our operating positions. Just give you a quick look at it. Like I say, 4 K3s, 2 of them were on FT8 and 2 of them were on some other band. There's some folks operating. For 160 and 80, we only had 1 spider pole up supporting both antennas. So we couldn't be on both bands at the same time because of that. And you get a little feel for the wind that we had there. The winds were typically constant 25 knots and gusting up to 50 knots while we were there. There was only one day where I saw that flag like this, and there was only one day where we didn't have some form of snow. Temperatures were typically in the low 30s, up toward 40 while we were there. Now, it doesn't show a lot. You can see snow in one of these pictures, but it doesn't show a lot. When I say we had snow every day, it just means we had snow. It didn't mean we had 6 inches. There you can see a little snow still residual, the antennas. There's the Canadian flag out on the left side, sticking almost straight out, shows you the winds. Murray putting antennas together. There's the EME antenna that was put up. Couple more operators. There's the EME station. We had him off to a separate room. 4 stations were set up in a row on those tables, and then the EME satellite was all back in the back room. We'll skip that picture. Glenn had shoulder rotator cuff operation before he went there. So here's the joke, even a one-armed doctor can make contacts with FT8. And you can see the Foxhound screen. I never worked Foxhound. I never worked it from the Fox side. And that was fun, because you could sit there, as you can see there, you just click, 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 and you could sit there and go over to the other one, click, 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 and then just watch them roll through there. And I would watch the streams to what kind of signal report I was getting back. I did not realize this, and maybe you don't. When you're in Foxhound, say you're running 100 watts and you go to 2 streams, well, you're not putting 50 watts in each stream. You're putting somewhat less than that. So when you go to 5 streams at 100 watts, you know, you're way down. So what I would do is watch my signal report compared to the signal report I was giving them and vary my stream number to try to maximize the throughput. And I think everyone else did the same thing. So if you're seeing a DXpedition and you see something like that happening, you say, well, why don't they have more streams? It's because they're watching their signal reports and trying to maximize. All right, our departure plan, we were supposed to have left the day before we left. And I think everybody out here that's been on what I'll call a tent and generator expedition will tell you that you never are on the island or wherever you are for the same amount of time you think you're going to be on. You either have to go there later or you have to leave there earlier because of weather or some other condition. And that weather came in, we had to stay another day. Oh my goodness, another day? We made 8,000 more QSOs in that day. There's the team with Sarah, who's the Parks Canada person. I didn't really bring it out, but Sable Island is a national park in Canada. It takes, as I mentioned earlier, it took us 7 years to get permission to get out there and operate. They were very helpful once we got there, and we really appreciated the work they did and support they gave us. There's one of the days where the snow was a little bit heavier. Again, you can see that Canadian flag sticking straight out. Those of us that were on the helicopter had to wear full immersion suits. The people on the plane, don't ask me why they didn't have to, but we had to have full immersion suits on the Sikorsky. There's the aircraft getting ready to leave. And then here's some of the numbers that you can see. The QSOs by mode, if you'll look there, that big one, 437, that gives you an idea. This one's not showing up quite. Oh, by continent. It's not showing the colors and all so you can see, but it was pretty well spread out. Sable Island, let me tell you, to me, it's truly a special place. They told us normally about 500 wild horses on the island. That's why the first slide showed 2 horses like that. 500 wild horses. They said while we were there were probably 600 wild horses on the island. There are hundreds of thousands of seals that birth and pup on that island every year, and this happened to be the time that they were doing that. And those of you that have been around seal poop, it's there. Let me tell you. We did get the opportunity to walk up and down the beach. I'll show you some pictures here in a minute. There was DQRM. Hey, which expedition doesn't have it? We knew there would be. We didn't have a mental institution person to really go out and see those people personally, but we wish we had. This is an observation that I didn't work the RIDI, but they said that the best RIDI ops were Italians. Do we have any Italians in here? Good, I can say this. I'm Paisano myself, so I can say this. Typically, I say the Italians are the worst operators in the world. So for us to say that they were the best RIDI operators was a compliment to them. Lou did all the RIDI operation. FT4 was an add-on just to have something different. There you can see some of the other stuff. We hope for long path openings to JAs on 10-12. They weren't like we wanted them to be. We did have some lengthy operations on 17 to the JAs, but Europe was so loud that it was really difficult to get through to the JAs as much as we could. But also, I see some Europeans out here. I'll say this, my experience this time was that we had some good, they listened to us, and we appreciated it. Okay, Sable Air, Debbie was the pilot. She made special effort for us. Her husband had prostate cancer just before we got there. And so she made a special effort for us to get out to the island. We really appreciated it. Vision Air, they were getting paid well. They did their job. Okay, our special friends on the island, there's some of the wild horses. We were allowed to walk close to them, but we had to stay 60 meters away from them. And you're not really allowed to interact with the wildlife on the island. They want to keep that as pristine as they possibly can. So you don't operate with them. But there are, believe it or not, even though it's a sandbar, there are freshwater ponds on this little sandbar so the horses get fresh water. But in the wintertime, now this picture was taken in the summer because you see green grass. It was nothing but brown grass there. And the horses, there won't be 600 of them come spring. We saw several carcasses out there. They don't collect the carcasses. They don't do anything. They just leave it there for nature to take its course. But the horses were so starved that they would walk out on the to where the seaweed had washed ashore and kind of paw it up, and they were eating the seaweed in order to get something to eat. Now, those of us that have been to the Far East know that seaweed's nice. It's got good nutrition and all that, so at least that's something for them. So you had to watch where you walked. There's the seals. There were gray seals and harbor seals? I forget what the other type is, but the two main types of seals out there. Won't stay with him or them. There's a whale that didn't quite make it. And I also want to, at this point, thank our sponsors. We had some great sponsors. There's some of them, and we really appreciate it. Any DXpedition that gets out there, they don't get out there on their own. They get some good folks. DX Engineering has always been good to us, but I don't want to single them out as an only one. If you'll look on there, you may find your club. If you don't, I encourage you to encourage them to help with these DXpeditions. And there's just some of the what do you call it, obligatory banners. DX Engineering and DEXA, North Carolina, or North California DX. What's the one on the left? And Clipperton. And then, of course, the end, we have to go out to the beach and put that on there.